Welcome back to 21 Days of Prayer and Worship. Pastors are online to answer any of your comments and to pray with you, so go ahead and fire those up. We're glad that you're joining us today. Let's get into the devotional. As soon as children are old enough to speak, one of the first questions parents ask is, how big are you? We played this game with our 3 daughters all the time. How big is Mackenzie? So big. Children always give the same answer. I'm so big, they say. They generally raise their hands high above their heads to gain additional stature, as if to say, I'm huge, I'm enormous, there's no telling how big I may be. This is not a scientific answer, though. You can't use it in every context. For example, if your wife were to ask you, how big do my hips look to you? You might not want to throw your hands over your head and say your hips are so big. We play this game and teach our children to say this because we want them to realize that they're growing. We know that the way they think about themselves matters. We don't want them to think of themselves as small or weak or lacking adequate strength to handle the challenges of life. We want them to know that they are so big. But I got a more important question for you today. How big is your God? How big is He in your life? Does He have limitations? Are there certain things that God can and can't do? I strongly believe that the way we live our life is a consequence of the size of our God. The problem many of us have is our God is too small. We're not fully convinced we're absolutely safe in His hands. We're not fully convinced that our all-powerful, all-knowing God can really handle the trials and the struggles of our life. So as a result, we live our lives in a constant state of fear and anxiety because everything in our life depends on us. Let me remind you today that our God's big enough. He's big enough to part the Red Sea and shut the mouths of the lions, but He makes Himself small enough to know us by our name, small enough to know the number of hairs on our head, the number of worries in our mind, and the number of scars on our heart. Jesus is big enough to create the universe and everything in it, but small enough to enter into our world as a baby in the little town of Bethlehem. And make no mistake about it, Jesus came to rescue us from ourselves, to rescue us from our sin. And one day, Jesus will return, and He'll set things right. One day, we'll walk on streets of gold. We're going to go to a place where there's no death, there's no sin, there's no sickness, and finally, once and for all, Satan is finally going to get it. Dad walked past his son's room late one night, only to find the door cracked a little bit and the boy's light still on. He peered in and saw his son reading a Wild West novel. He knew the boy was supposed to be asleep, but the boy was giggling, saying, "You're gonna get it. You're gonna get it." Well, the father was curious, and he pushed the door open, and he said, "Son, you're supposed to be asleep. What are you doing?" The little boy said, "Well, I'm reading this Wild West novel." The dad said, "Well, son, I couldn't help but hear you saying, 'You're gonna get it. You're gonna get it.'" The little boy said, "Dad, I was reading the book, and in every chapter, it seemed like the villain was beating up the cowboy and it was driving me crazy. So I skipped to the end of the book, and I read the last chapter. Now I know what's going to happen. So I'm reading through the book, but now, whenever the villain's getting the best of the cowboy, I just smile and say, 'You're going to get it. You're going to get it.'" Have you read the end of the Bible? Sin's going to get it. Satan's going to get it. Death is finally going to get it, all because of Jesus. This weekend, when you tune into our worship services starting at 4 o'clock on Saturday, we're going to take a look at how amazing heaven is and how a person gets to heaven. I want you to invite as many people as you can who are staying at home to come and watch our services. Last weekend, we had over 28,000 people watch online, and with your help, we can break 30,000 this weekend. You can watch using the Sagebrush app. You can go to our webpage. You can watch using Apple TV. Just go to the App Store and download the app on your TV. You can also watch on YouTube and on Roku TV. This weekend's message will encourage you and your friend and family members. So share this link and let's have church online this weekend. Remember, our God is big enough to handle your today. I'll see you for church online this weekend.